Every product that reaches an American store, from coffee to computers, arrives by sea. That makes global shipping the lifeline of every economy on Earth. Now, the United Nations wants control of that lifeline, no surprise, through a new net zero mandate on cargo ships, an initiative designed by the International Maritime Organization, or IMO. The IMO's plan requires ships to cut emissions by 40% by 2030 and reach net zero by mid-century. Compliance would mean new fuel standards, global fees on shipping emissions, and retrofitting fleets at a cost estimated above $1 trillion. Supporters argue it's necessary to reduce the industry's 3% share of global emissions. Opponents have been arguing as far back as April that the real cost will fall on consumers as freight and food prices rise.
Because if this were passed at the high end of what they're talking about, $150 a ton, that doubles the price of fuel for us, ocean fuel for, our tankers and this kind of thing, and container ships. And that makes everything in our economy more expensive, and it hurts America most of all.
In August, the U.S. rejected the IMO's net zero framework, warning that it would damage American competitiveness and violate national sovereignty. The Trump administration instructed U.S. delegates to block any global carbon pricing scheme that allows foreign bureaucrats to dictate U.S. energy policy. European and environmental groups insist, though, the plan is needed to fund climate projects in developing countries. The U.S. and major trading nations counter that it would create a global tax system without consent of national governments. The issue has become a test case for who controls the terms of global commerce, elected governments or unelected international agencies. Our next guest is senior economist for the Committee for a Constructive Tomorrow and the inventor of the revolutionary approach to slashing government spending of CPI minus X. Darren Nelson joins us now. Darren, 3% risk of climate change?
3%?
That's what they say. They say if we let ships continue to ship, they're going to help cut down by 3%.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, not being particularly an expert in the science of it, except I've kind of as an amateur, I've been following it probably since the mid-1990s. I'd say even that's probably too high of a percentage. Of 3%.
$1 trillion, though. $1 trillion will slash it by 3%. That sounds like quite the investment.
Yeah, I've heard actually a figure lately in the context of apparently Bill Gates has now decided he's no longer kind of all in for tackling climate change at any expense. And in that context, someone came up with a figure that that the world, if you like, taxpayers have footed the bill of something like 12 trillion so far for this. For either no effect on temperature, well, probably no effect on temperature, or certainly negligible anyway, if anything.
Okay, so from an economist standpoint, what concerns you about this entire packaging and how it's still being pressed by the global community?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that concerns me, actually, in your sort of opening, the opening to this, you actually came up with all my best kind of talking points, to be honest. It's certainly kind of like taxation without representation. Mm-hmm. Obviously, that was a key component of our revolution here in the U.S. Instead of, sort of people on the other side of the ocean in London making decisions for the U.S., sadly, these unaccountable bureaucrats are sitting in New York City, interestingly enough, obviously at the United Nations. And they've been pushing these type of schemes, if you like, either a carbon tax or things along the lines of a carbon tax since, around 1998, this kind of all really started to, actually, no, sorry, take that back, 1988, this all started to kick off through the IPCC.
A worldwide global carbon tax on everything.
The whole sort of climate agenda probably took off, in 1988. People kind of debate that. So carbon tax came on the agenda probably only several years or so after that. Mm-hmm. And the United Nations has been pushing for that for quite some time, either domestic governments to do that, or better yet, they like the idea of them doing it because then they get a big slush fund, right, that they say that they're going to use for all these different things. But let's face it, they're, they have a reputation for being a little bit on the corrupt side.
So we are now at least 30-40 years into global actors stepping in and saying we all need to pitch in and help reduce climate change and reduce the impacts of climate change in developing nations. We've had a long track record of, quote, trying to fight all that. How is it that the experts continue to justify what clearly looks like a failing track record?
There's at least a couple ways. First of all, they keep on using these models that have already kind of like predetermined what the outcome is going to be. Like, Al Gore's famous hockey stick, oh, this is what's going to happen to temperatures. And it doesn't happen. They keep
Florida's supposed to be underwater, according to him.
Yeah, the guy who owns, I believe, multiple beach houses. Keeps on purchasing these things, so he's not personally afraid of rising oceans.
Or he has great insurance.
And they never do like a really serious cost-benefit analysis type approach to say, look, what's really, if this is a problem, let's look at all the best solutions. Let's determine it really is a problem. How bad is it likely to be? Let's get different opinions. Let's get people who disagree with us and put it all in the mix. That's not how they ever approached it, right? And even looking at to bring it back to the IMO most recently, they do have a pretty big, complex-looking sort of cost-benefit analysis. But when you start drilling into it, it's just got holes all throughout it.
Like what holes?
Well, first of all, it's not really a cost-benefit analysis. They kind of look at, oh, well, what's some of the costs of implementation, which is nice. They don't look at kind of the broader dynamic cost to the economy, like essentially this degrowth movement, if you like, because that's the really big cost. Is like, how much does this impact, not only just like the costs of like an industry like the maritime shipping. Well, how does that impact obviously competition within that, and thus seeking lower prices, and how that then knocks on to consumers and impacts other industries. So they never kind of look at it dynamically like that. Okay. And they certainly, and the same, I'll mention, just to kind of, hopefully not bring in another topic, but they're trying to do this in aviation as well, sort of, through ICAO.
Carbon tax on
aviation? I mean, the IMO thing pretends not to be a carbon tax. It's kind of very complex, but when you look at it, it's ultimately kind of a tax, even though they start calling it a pricing mechanism. ICAO is a bit more nebulous. Like it certainly looks a little less like a carbon tax, but they're still trying to achieve the same stuff, trying to take climate action and putting the burdens onto first in industry and then onto the customers of this industry, with hopefully a slush fund that kind of comes back to the UN in some, respect.
This all seems to have been effectively stopped by the Trump administration and his State Department team, those who have been watching the shenanigans of the UN. Not a scenario we would have seen play out under the Biden administration, but the Trump team, I think, seems to understand that these are very much policies that are in the works that the United States is going to constantly get lassoed into. Yeah.
I mean, this also, I think I pointed out in my op-ed on this for you guys at OAN, that it goes against 3 kind of executive orders, including one about shipping, and the desire for American shipping to come back, particularly, ocean shipping. We already have kind of, if you like, non-international ocean shipping in the U.S. and obviously Great Lakes, but they want to get America to be a player again in kind of like international shipping. And also in aviation, too. They don't have a specific one about commercial aviation, but they have one about supersonic aviation. So, this will impact, to some extent, that executive order as well. The Trump administration isn't explicitly onto this yet, but, they're pretty smart. I'm pretty sure they're going to get onto it. And if, hopefully by watching your show, they'll at least get prompted to get onto this, because although the ICAO thing isn't quite as problematic, the cost projections aren't as huge as the ones for shipping, they'll want to jack it up at some stage. So
it's a constant fight, and every time we talk about what the UN is up to on the climate change side of the world, they're always sneaking in more justifications and more taxes on the rest of us. All right, well, Darren Nelson, thanks for keeping an eye on this stuff. All right, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.